All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get into something, well, something I think is really crucial. We're talking about shadow work. But specifically, we're looking at a set of sources that outline these really gentle, practical rituals. And they're designed for a very specific kind of person, the deep thinker.
And that distinction is everything, isn't it? Because when you look at the research on people with high intellectual or, emotional depth, their gifts are extraordinary. We're talking about real insight, powerful intuition, empathy, all of it. But, and this is the key, depth always casts a shadow.
That's such a great way to put it. It's not that you're broken, it's just the unintegrated side of your biggest strengths.
Precisely. If you have high intuition, the shadow might be that you project your fears onto situations. Or if you need solitude to recharge, the shadow version is, well, it's hiding, it's escape.
Yeah.
For a lot of people listening, that amazing mind becomes a trap of overthinking.
And that's exactly the tension we want to unpack today. So we're not here to fight the shadow. The mission is to look at 3 really specific, gentle rituals from the material. The idea is to help you see what's been hidden. Because the shadow isn't the enemy, it's just the unfinished part of your wisdom. Okay, let's unpack this.
To start, we really have to understand why gentleness is so important for the deep thinker. It's non-negotiable, really. See, their shadow isn't this loud, chaotic thing. It's internal. It's private. One of the papers we looked at had this beautiful description. It called it a soft ache behind the ribs, a silent pattern.
It's quiet, but it's so dense. And it forms in those moments, right? When your depth wasn't recognized, or your silence was seen as being distant, or your big emotions were just invalidated.
Yes, and this is the core definition the sources give us, which I just love. Shadow is simply depth without expression. You process so much alone. You learn to think about your hurt instead of actually feeling it. And that just leads to this huge pileup of unexpressed emotion.
So that's why the standard advice, scream into a pillow can feel
Jarring. Or even inauthentic. Absolutely. The main directive here is not about fixing anything. And it's not really about some big dramatic catharsis. It's about seeing. It's about acknowledging what's been hidden away for so long, without judgment.
Okay, so if the problem is the silent buildup, the solution has to be about giving that silence a voice, which brings us to the first tool, a way to engage with that part of you that learned to be quiet. It's called the shadow dialogue.
The dialogue, yeah, it's basically a written conversation. And writing is key because it bypasses that over-analytical mind that wants to jump in and correct everything. You're literally writing to your wounded self on paper. It kind of forces an honesty that you can't get when it's all just spinning around in your head.
And it has a structure, which I think is so helpful. It's not just random journaling. You're directing 3 specific questions to that wounded part. What are they?
They're designed to sort of map out the defenses. The first one is, what do you fear? Which gets to the root of the overthinking. The second is, what are you protecting? This is about the armor we build. And the third, which is maybe the most important, is, what do you need from me? You're asking what it needed back then that it never got.
I can almost hear people thinking right now, though, if I'm someone who intellectualizes everything, won't this just become another, mental exercise? How do you keep it real?
That's a fantastic question. And it's the most common trap. The key is in the instruction. You have to write the answers as the wounded self. No editing, no analyzing as you go. The wounded self doesn't use big words. It speaks in feelings, raw fears, simple needs. If your answer sounds like an academic paper, you're back in your head. The honest answer to what are you protecting isn't I am maintaining emotional equilibrium. It's something like I'm protecting myself from being disappointed again.
That distinction changes everything. And it brings us right back to overthinking. Deep thinkers overthink because they're terrified of being wrong in ways that really matter. And that fear gets disguised as a hunt for perfection. This dialogue lets that shadow of precision, the overthinking, finally say what it's actually afraid of, which is where it gets really interesting.
Yes, exactly. Overthinking is just your mind endlessly debating a fear that your heart already knows is there. By writing it down, you let the mind take a step back and just witness the fear instead of trying to solve it.
So powerful. Okay, so giving the shadow a voice is step 1. But what about all the feeling that we can't even put into words, the stuff that's just there?
It lives in the body. And that's where the second ritual comes in. It's called the emotional body scan. This one is all about bridging that mind-body gap that's so common for highly analytical people. It respects the need for clarity over, high drama.
So the process is basically, you just stop. You close your eyes and you ask your body, where does this live? Is it that tightness in your throat, that heavy feeling in your chest, the knot in your stomach?
Exactly. You locate it. Maybe it feels like a dense ball of grief right in your solar plexus. And once you find it, this is the core instruction. And it's the hardest part. You sit with it, you breathe into it. And the mandate is crystal clear. Do not fix witness.
Oof, that's so hard, especially for people who are wired to be problem solvers. Why is just witnessing so critical?
Because the moment a deep thinker identifies a problem, the mind is already 5 steps ahead, planning solutions.
Mm.
And that is the opposite of integration. The shadow is just unacknowledged pain. It only softens when it's seen, when it's held, not when it's shoved out the door.
Yeah.
By finding it in your body, you make the feeling real. You name it, you give it an address, and you just sit with it. That's the work.
Wow. Okay. So we have the dialogue for voice, the scan for location. Let's get to the third big challenge, solitude. Solitude is essential for deep thinkers, but it can also become a place to hide from unmet needs.
Yes, and we have to learn the difference. The material calls this shadow solitude. It's when you use isolation to avoid emotional risks. You retreat instead of saying you're hurt. You say no to connection because it feels safer to be alone.
And the irony is, deep thinkers don't do this because they hate people.
No, it's because they feel too much. They're retreating from their own intense feelings as much as anything else.
So how do you tell the difference? That's what the third ritual is for, right? The solitude alignment check.
Exactly. And it's the simplest one. It's just one question you ask yourself in a quiet moment. You just ask, am I retreating for peace or out of fear?
That one question cuts right through it.
It really does. Because the answer tells you everything. I need space to restore. That's healing. That's a healthy boundary. That leads you back to connection when you're ready.
But the other answer, I'm afraid they won't get it, or I'm afraid of being seen.
That's the shadow.
That's the hide.
Correct. That's the wall. And real shadow work starts the moment you can honestly tell the difference. This little check is your compass. It helps you navigate back toward self-trust.
This has been so incredibly practical. So to recap this whole gentle approach, we have the shadow dialogue to give silence a voice, then the emotional body scan to witness feelings without fixing them, and the solitude alignment check to make sure our boundaries are healthy. It's not about being perfect. It's about integration.
That's it exactly. The goal is wholeness. It's about learning to live with emotional honesty, to trust yourself, and to see your wounds as sources of wisdom. There's actually a beautiful affirmation in one of the sources, an integration statement. It's simply, I see the part of me that was hurt. I honor the part of me that survived.
So what does this all mean? It means your shadow isn't the opposite of your light. It's just part of your light's journey. If overthinking is the shadow endlessly debating the truth, I'll leave you with this question. What is one small thing you can trust your first knowing on today without debating it? Just listen to that quiet initial voice. Walk with your shadow. Listen to it. Integrate it. That's how you become the most powerful version of yourself. Not in noise, but in truth.